It's a nice opening statement there from the council. I'll take that. Thank you very much. My mom would be happy, actually, to have you say those things. So she would probably give you a different opinion of me. Can you hear me okay? Or should I pick it up like this?
You're okay.
Okay? All right. So I'm really excited that Bud was able to come. So it's a great honor for me to be able to present with Bud. So I'm going to talk a little bit, and I want to make sure that he has some time to talk too. Because I think it's really important for us to remember the origins of where we come from. Sometimes we get so busy doing the work that we do that we forget why we're even doing this in the first place necessarily. What is it that got us started? And as I've been reminded, interestingly, there's people who work in the field now who weren't even born when Bud first came up with the idea. Sorry, well, we had the conversation about that yesterday. But, it's just amazing that this has been going on for 28 years because it's still such a creative and innovative area. So we want to spend today talking about what really is kind of the origins, but also what's the value of what we're doing, and are we making progress in the fight that we've all undertaken here. So everybody knows it's super difficult to investigate child abuse. It's probably one of the most difficult crimes, at least in criminal activity. In almost all other crimes, a crime occurred. You just have to figure out who did it. Cases that everybody in this room gets, you don't even know if a crime occurred. You're just a suspicion of a crime. And so rarely do you have proof positive that a crime has occurred. We have no tests that we can give to kids or offenders to know whether or not the abuse has occurred. Rarely we have medical evidence, but sometimes then it doesn't even identify the offender. So the most common personality profile for offenders is a normal profile. They look and act and talk well. They're skilled at manipulating their environment. And there's also this stigma about it. So everything is in some ways is stacked against us. It's a real challenge, but it's not impossible because people are making progress, and that's part of what I want to communicate to you today. I also want to communicate about why this is so important. We get so focused on child abuse and the case, an individual situation, that we sometimes lose sight of kind of the bigger picture about why this is so important. And I had someone who said to me one time, I don't think you're thinking large enough about it. Why is it so important to respond to sexual abuse and child abuse and have this CAC? And I was like, well, it's about helping protect kids, but why is it that it's so critically important? The more I thought about it and started doing some reading, what I'm going to suggest to you is it's about improving our nation's health and economy. That is the ultimate goal of why we do what we do. It's about why we protect kids so they can be healthier, so they can be happier, so they can be more productive. So I want to share with you just a few things here this morning before I turn it over to the real treat, which is Bud Kramer. If you haven't heard of the Adverse Childhood Experiences research and study, it's an amazing body of work. It was revolutionary at the time when Kaiser Permanente said we're going to do a real kind of deep dive on what are the impacts of child maltreatment and other adverse childhood experiences on health outcomes. So they had all these 17,000 people they followed, and what they found was alarming. They asked them about different kinds of abuse that they had experienced and neglect. These are adults, and then they connected that with outcomes that are just simply amazing. First off, 64% of all the participants, they had experienced at least one adverse childhood experience. So these are, it's common. 2 out of every 3 adults, you would suspect then are having some kind of adverse experience in childhood. And a lot of them had more. For individuals that had 4 or more, they were incredibly higher. 390% increase in chronic pulmonary lung disease, 240% increase in hepatitis. They were 1,220% more likely to commit suicide than those who had experienced no adverse childhood experiences. What you see today is going to continue to have impacts throughout the course of the lifetime of these children that we see on a daily basis. And that's what this study really said. For people who had 6 or more adverse childhood experiences, they live 20 years less. So if you go think about this in real life, if you get a case next week And it's a child that's been sexually abused, physically abused, there's domestic violence in the home, there's substance abuse in the home, there's community violence in the neighborhood, and maybe they're bullied at school. That's 6. Do you go to that mom or that kid and say, you know what, you need to enjoy life because based on the ACEs research study, you're going to live 20 years less than your peers? That's a stark reality to think about. The issue was when all this data was, these people were kids, we didn't have the programs we have now. We have programs to help kids now to have better outcomes over time, and that's the work that you do every day, and that's why it's so important. Economic impact. Research has been done out of the Midwest following people over time that says individuals who experience child abuse earn on average $8,000 less than their peers per year. They're less likely to own a house, they're less likely to own a car, they're less likely to have stock or investments. So we're talking about economic viability. That some individuals who have a history of maltreatment, do you say that to your client when you see him next week? Well, because this happened, you're not going to earn as much as your peers do. No, we don't say that, but it does say that the impact of our work is dramatic, and it goes beyond just helping a child, sleep through the night next week. It's about a lifetime of improvement. And the cost of health care is the same. Women who have a history of sexual abuse, their health care costs are 16% higher. And for women who've been both physically and sexually abused, it's 36% higher. The point I'm trying to make is it's important for us to think more broadly and expansively about the dramatic impacts that all of you are having on a daily basis when you do your job. It's more than just holding that offender accountable, helping protect those child. What we're doing is we're helping address these chronic issues that have affected our nation's health and economy. The CDC published a research study last year that said that actual costs, or the projected costs for each case of confirmed child abuse, non-fatal child abuse, $210,000 over the course of a lifetime. So every time you have a kid and you substantiate a case or you feel like abuse has occurred, cha-ching, that's $210,000 of cost to our society. And they break it down by all the different costs that they estimated. For cases of fatal child abuse, it's actually $1.2 million. So when you have maybe that young child who's shaken and dies as a result of those injuries, that's a loss to our society of $1.2 million. I don't mean to make it too much dollars and cents, but in some ways, in order to engage other people, we have to be able to communicate in a way that says, we're having a huge impact in what we're doing, and it has an impact on our nation's health and economy. So, well, if we're going to say that, what do we actually know about the impact of CACs and MDTs? Well, we know that communities where there are CACs, they have improved coordinated responses, more team interviews, more case reviews. Interviews are being done in a child-friendly setting, more likely for those interviews to be recorded. We also know that client satisfaction, what the kids and families say, that the parents feel that it's a better way of going about the investigation. They have higher rates of satisfaction when they're seen at a CAC. And the kids are saying that they're significantly more likely to be not at all or not very scared during the forensic interview when it's done in a child-friendly setting at the CAC. They're more likely to gain access to medical care, in both cases where there's allegations of penetration and where there's allegations that do not involve penetration. Cases get investigated and processed more quickly. Charging decisions are made significantly faster in communities where there are CACs and MDTs. We have higher prosecution rates, dramatically increased prosecution rates while still maintaining a high conviction rate. So the rates per 100,000 kids go up dramatically when there's a community, when the CAC is being utilized, somewhere in the neighborhood of 200%. I've seen some communities where it's gone up 300%. And all of this, in light of the cost-benefit analysis, it also says that what we're doing is actually cheaper. We eliminate the duplication of various people doing the same things over and over. And we found when we compared a community that had a CAC versus communities that don't have a CAC, that we actually are saving money. It costs less to use the CAC approach and the MDT approach because we are not duplicating things. It's everything that's talked about now in government is about eliminating duplication, streamlining, efficiency. Well, I think the people who work on MDTs, we've been doing that for a long time, thanks to the leadership of Bud Kramer, who said there's got to be a better way. There's got to be a better way, that we don't create these kids that say, you know what, my experience is so bad, and I've even had kids say it to my face, if I had it to do all over again, I wish I hadn't told. What I've been through with the system was worse than my dad sexually abusing me twice. Those are chilling stories, and I think I applaud all of you for your efforts to help overcome that and create those, make those stories go away. But there's hope. We have lived for many, many years saying 1 in 4 and 1 in 7, right? Anybody know where that data comes from? At this point, it's pretty old. The most recently collected data came from adults that was collected in the 1990s. And that was from adults. So those adults, when they were kids, it was back in the 1980s, 70s, 60s. That data, there's no published research that now today says 1 in 4 and 1 in 7 is accurate. It's just not collected. I want to challenge you to say, I think we're making progress here. We've increased our detection rates. We find out about more cases of abuse than we do. That's why caseloads stay high. And that's why all of you are so busy. But the data is suggesting, and I want to suggest to you that we are making progress. We are in a transition from a time when we had this crisis of child sexual abuse to now, 28 years later, we have models that are effective and they're working and we're making progress. And so no longer is it throwing money at a problem. It is now you're investing in a solution that's proven. I just share with you some research that says this model works. It works in all the domains and it's cheaper. And I want to share with you about some research that's out that is looking at this exact issue. Looking at all the kind of research that's out there, there's 4 main studies that qualify to, with this. Data collected since 2000, not using adult self-report, where they sufficiently identified child sexual abuse, more than 1,000 individuals involved in each of these studies, and it was all done in the U.S. So I think that these are like the gold standard of studies. And what we find is people are finding pretty consistent numbers, 8.2%, 9.8%. 8.5, 7.7. So instead of 1 in 4 and 1 in 7, we're overall probably looking more at 1 in 10. 1 in 10 kids will experience child sexual abuse during their childhood. Now that's a great progress. It's still horrific that it even happens to the number of children it does, but we are making progress. And let me just kind of, I guess I'll delete a slide. This has a huge impact. You take that number, think about instead of 1 in 5, it's now 1 in 10. So if sexual abuse has gone down by half, think about the number of children times $210,000 per case. That's a big number. When you do the math, just based on the reduction of child sexual abuse over the last 20 years, I would suggest to you that every year we're having a huge impact on our nation's economy by reducing the costs of health care and other interventions that are necessary to be out there. Somewhere to the tune of $1.5 trillion every 18 years with a cohort of kids. So that repeats itself every 18 years. Just so you know, that's 1/15 of our nation's national debt. And that's the impact that you're having on helping protect kids and ultimately improving our nation's health and economy. So, with that, I want to invite Bud Kramer to come up here and share with you his wisdom, his experience, his background. I still remember the time when for the first time I ever spoke to him when I was applying for this job, and it was a thrill, and it's a thrill to present with him also. So, thanks, Bud.